What were fairies originally? We think of Disney fairies, but what were they in mythology and in literature at first? Very different things. That alone is an hour of conversation. Is it just me, or are people getting bad at talking? Conversation seems to be dying. I think this has been going on for a long time. I remember the old timers used to talk about how people could have long and meaningful conversations, but that people my age didn't have the attention spans for it. Like these muscles we never developed for talking to other human beings and relating to them. Have you ever tried to tell someone about something very important to you, only to realize that they're scrolling their phone or that they immediately turn the conversation towards themselves and really didn't give what you said any attention? This is a very common problem, I think. I'm going to give 2 or 3 reasons for why I think it's become so widespread, and then 2 or 3 ways to become a very good conversationalist. The first reason I think this has become a problem is attention spans. I grew up watching Sesame Street, and the short clips trying to teach us the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s were so short to keep us glued to the TV for 45 minutes or an hour, but I think it wreaked havoc on our attention spans. But that is nothing compared to the age of social media, when Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever, TikTok, they're all showing you as many reels or whatever can keep you engaged in their social media app for as long as possible. They're just quick, insignificant reels to keep you engaged, but it's wreaking havoc on our attention spans. So go back in time a little bit and compare that to generations that grew up reading Jules Verne, Moby Dick, the great American novel, or The Brothers K by Dostoevsky, or Jane Austen or Charles Dickens, on and on, H.G. Wells. Those books, we think of them as being for this academic, pretentious, cultural elite, but those are books written for basically everybody. We are tired, often overworked, and extremely distracted, some of it by design for the profit of corporations. The good news is I think we can kind of recover our attention span a little bit. But the second reason is narcissism. In an era where everything and everyone is their own brand, we're told to do this, to make ourselves our own brand, and sort of present ourselves as though we're experts or that the world is about us. And then we follow each other on Instagram and share probably too much about our lives. I could go on, but I think narcissism, the idea that I'm rather important in the situation, has led to people being unable to relate or listen to deeply other people. So here's a few simple things to become better conversationalists. I realized years ago I was sitting around with a group of friends and then later with family, and we're all on our phones. And I realized we are not able to have a deep, meaningful conversation about anything difficult or deep. We want to live on the surface and live in these distractions and never have to address difficult, serious things or really ask questions of meaning, especially when it's easier to live in pop cultural references. But this is like a muscle you can develop. Tip number 1, don't be a narcissist. Even if you might be a narcissist a bit, when you're talking to somebody else, just don't immediately turn the conversation and redirect it towards yourself. I have found that not everyone, but I want to say something like, I would guess like at least 8 in 10 people do this. If you bring something up, they will often turn it immediately back towards themselves, not even knowing that they're doing it. But here's the thing with that. You're not that interesting. I'm not that interesting. Talking about myself constantly can only be so interesting. And the reality is, people don't care that much anyway. On the reverse of that, I've found that if you ask an open-ended question about the other person, about 8 out of 10 times, they'll take you up on it. Even if not consciously, they will begin to talk about themselves. Because I think many of us have a hard time making friendships, or we don't have support at home. And so when someone finally asks, it's almost like we're tempted to word vomit. Now, I would say don't word vomit or spill your guts, but if you're asking about someone else, they'll probably talk for a while about themselves. Talking about interesting things, ideas, experiences makes you a more interesting person. Immediately directing the conversation to yourselves makes you boring. Now, there are like 3 people in the world that I vent to on occasion because I'm trying to process some idea, and I know they are wiser than I am. And for that, I am so sorry to you if you're watching. But that means I respect you. Now, don't be the guy. Don't be the guy. who's you're a 50-year-old man and you ask a question just for the sole purpose of talking about your experience with that topic. How was your weekend? You don't care. You don't care how the weekend was. You just want to talk about your weekend. You want to word vomit your weekend, but you don't listen to them talk about it. Don't be that guy. It's absurdly infantile. Infantile. The dinner table. The old timers used to talk about the dinner table where people, we all should sit around the table, look a man in the eye, have a conversation. You can't do that, you young people. Watching your Sesame Street and your G.I. Joes and your cell phones. The thing is, they were right. If you develop the habit of not eating every meal in front of the TV, but at a table with a friend or at a table with your family, no phones, put them things away. If you need to play a board game as you eat to get the conversation going, whatever you need to do, practice sitting together, even in silence, and eventually it becomes natural. People need to vent, but don't be a narcissist about it. And here's the second thing, it's a simple thing. There are more interesting things in the world to talk about. There are greater things in heaven and earth than you dream of in your philosophies. Living generations tend to live in pop culture. And I'm not a snob, I'm not against that. I like pop culture. But if you make that your entire personality, well, you're going to inevitably be a shallow conversationalist. So I suggest instead of talking about yourself too much or talking about the latest Marvel movie, talk about travel, talk about architecture, talk about astronomy, space, the distance between stars, talk about the latest discoveries in various species they're still discovering. What about art? There's so much. I'm not a big fan of Picasso, but Picasso went through different periods of his life, his blue period, his red period. That alone can at least have some semblance of a deeper, more meaningful conversation. But what about the history of art and how art represents ideas? What is art? You see how this is already sort of beginning to turn the conversation away from the two individuals talking, and now the two individuals can talk about something interesting that makes the conversation between the two people more meaningful. Not to say it too crudely, but shallow people tend to talk about people. Less shallow people tend to talk about ideas, history, culture, cinema, art, religion. We're told not to talk about those things, but those things are fascinating. The animal kingdom. Look, here are just a few books that talk about cool ideas to get you started. This is C.S. Lewis's The Discarded Image. These are some of his academic, essays talking about the medieval worldview, how the medievals saw the cosmos as a synthesis, theology, philosophy, scientia, knowledge, science. And they saw not Christianity as a replacement for past belief systems, but really they saw a synthesis between things they regarded as true. But this, they probably didn't validate some of the information about physics, for example, well enough before they incorporated it into their model. And so in the modern world, it's been discarded. In my view, we've discarded too much. We threw out the baby with the bathwater, and we've been paying for it. But that alone is fascinating. What were fairies originally? We think of Disney fairies, but what were they in mythology and in literature at first? Very different things. That alone is an hour of conversation. Macbeth, William Shakespeare. Cicero, these are his writings on the good life, worth a read. After Humanity by Michael Ward. I think most political conversations now are absolute drivel. Most of them on social media are rage bait. But talking about how things have changed and how we got here can be interesting, even if I don't agree. Why Liberalism Failed by Patrick Deenan. This remake of the 1980s Ninja Turtles Technodrome, which I never got as a kid. Thanks, Mom. But my wife got it for me. Again, I think pop culture can be fun as long as it's not the depth of your entire worldview or your personality. This is a replica of P52, Papyrus 52, the John Rylands Papyrus. This is the earliest Greek manuscript. This is a facsimile of the earliest Greek manuscript that we have for the Gospel of John. And this is surprisingly early, and I find that absolutely fascinating. The Quest for the Holy Grail, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. The more you understand about, I think, our own cultural inheritance, the more you see how flavorful the world really is, and it just gives you so much more to talk about. But even still, the best of modern cinema or music. How all these ideas connect, how philosophers in history would engage with each other. I don't know, building a catapult, archery, hiking. One day I'm going to climb Mount Olympus and tell no one. You get the idea. Talking about ourselves constantly, or the shallowness of pop culture, can leave us very stale. Working on our attention spans, beginning to exercise those muscles, and talking about interesting things. Eventually you'll find out it's like riding a bike. It's hard at first, but then you just know how to do it. Hey, but sometimes times can be hard, and I want you to know that wherever you are right now, if you're still watching, your life matters. Don't forget that. God loves you. People love you. Don't check out early. Live your life. Live it to the fullest. As always, thanks for watching. God bless.